Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Um, I was in Toronto the other day, dropping off kids to the airport and all that business, and I happened into a bookstore, and I came across this series here. You'll find these really inexpensive. Who publishes these anyway? Arcturus Holdings Limited. Okay, or Arcturus Publishing Limited. You might have seen these. They're certainly in all the Canadian chain stores. This series, I have a few of them. They have some of the prominent classics. I know I have some more of them around here somewhere, and you could buy them cheaply. This one was $7, and it's 144 pages. I had heard of this book. I just didn't know what to make of it. I was never really very interested in Eastern religious stuff, in Buddhism or Hinduism, but now I really am. I'm completely fascinated. Not completely. I love every religious source or whatever. So this is by a German writer, though, not an Eastern writer, not an Asian writer. Hermann Hesse is a German, and this is the first work of his I've ever read, and this was published in 22, was it? Yep. So first published in Germany in 1922. I don't know anything about Hermann Hesse other than I've seen some of his books here and there, but I've never read any of them. I was blown away by this book. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. Why, how, what, when, why? I kept thinking that this is one of those books that could really change somebody's life. Like, for instance, the Socratic, the what would you call them? The Socratic writings of Plato did for me. So like the writings surrounding Plato's death, like the Phaedo, the Credo, the Apology, changed mine, because they're basically books about the philosophical life, about taking thought seriously, taking the intellectual life seriously. And this is in many ways like that. Or what's another book a lot like that? I guess Augustine's Confessions. I'm trying to think of, I know there's other ones, like, gosh, but they don't come to mind. Just like books that are really like just amazing, sort of, what would you call them, like books that get you to take seriously like the interior life. And I know there's another one I want to think of, but it just won't jump to mind. Other truck going by. So I was confused about this book too, because I thought that the Buddha's name was Siddhartha, and so I was like, oh, it must be a book about Buddha, the Buddha. I was always taught his name was Siddhartha Gotama, but one thing that's funny is you realize that all the names in this book have meaning. So every name, every term, every place, every person has meaning, and the author gives you the definition at the end. So there's like, I don't know, 30 concepts or terms in here that are really essential to understand what's going on if you're a Westerner and you don't know much about Hinduism or Buddhism. So Hinduism is to Buddhism like Judaism is to Christianity, okay? One comes from the other. It's not exactly the same as the other, but you can't have one without the other, or you can't have the later one without the former one, right? So it's not about the Buddha, although the Buddha, Gotama, appears in this book. So he's one of the characters. He's a minor character. He only shows up very briefly. So it's about this guy Siddhartha, and Siddhartha is from the upper class. I don't know if that's the right word, but the highest caste. You wouldn't say class, you'd say caste. Class is different. Class is basically money dependent, whereas caste is like a religious sort of taboo type thing. It's a religious concept. So he was from the Brahmin caste, which is the priestly caste in India. I suppose it would be somewhat equivalent to the tribe of Levi in Israel, but Levi's weren't above everybody else. The Levi tribe wasn't above everybody else, but they were the priestly class in Israel. And the Brahmin were the priestly class in India, which made them better. They were above everybody else. So this book is about, it starts with this Siddhartha, the titular character, as a boy of great promise and great spiritual curiosity and seriousness. And it's basically about his life journey. Okay, it's not that long. It's, as I said, 144 pages. But it is really, it's not a book with a lot of events in it, although the events are well timed. Just good timing in this book. It doesn't lag. It's never boring. I never found it boring, but if you don't like spirituality, you won't like this book. If you don't want to think about religious concepts, spiritual concepts, concepts of prayer, meditation, contemplation, then this isn't the book for you. But I found it to be extraordinary in that way, and as thoughtful and rich as, say, those Socratic writings I mentioned. So it just follows him on his life journey, basically, and it's very Eastern. What do I mean by that? We know that in the West we think of history and spirituality linearly, that because of Judaism and then Christianity, we see history as having a beginning and an end. And that's not just world history, but it's church history, and it's human history, individual human history. Human beings also have beginnings, middle, and ends. And we talk about our concept of providence means that God provides, or God has constructed a story for everybody in a way that we have significant lives, that everyone has a story, so to speak. The East has a much more fluid idea of time. Basically, time is irrelevant, and that's one of the themes that comes up in this book, is time is irrelevant. Well, it's not irrelevant in the West. It's irrelevant in the East, and it's very thoughtful. It's very interesting, and for me, my whole intellectual life began when I was engaged with Plato. If I had read this book instead at that time, I don't think this book would not have had the effect on me that Plato did, or Augustine did, or, say, for instance, the Fioretti of St. Francis had on me. Because, whereas I'm very curious and sympathetic to the different modes of conception, spiritual modes of conception, that the East entertains, again, that there's no God overseeing everything per se, there's no personal identity, that identity changes and is fluid, that there's no coherent moral law or natural law governing the world and everyone's individual life. This book wouldn't have appealed to me as a youngster. It is not a book of framework. Young people in this day and age want a moral framework. We don't have it today. Our society doesn't give it to young people, and so we crave it. And I found it from Plato, I found it from Augustine, and various other Western sources. I could see why Eastern thought was so popular in the West in the 60s, because they were breaking down structure. In the 60s, structure was considered oppressive, and they were coming out of their perception that Christian culture was constrictive and oppressive. And so I could understand why there'd be so much interest, why the Eastern Hinduism and Buddhism would have such appeal in the West at that time. But we see the very opposite at work now more often. We see that the Christian churches that have the most rules and the most structure and the most ritual and the strongest traditions are the ones that are appealing to young people, especially young men. So I mean Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy. So again, I don't know if I would have enjoyed this when I was 17 or 18. Maybe I would have, but I really enjoyed it today. And did I gain anything from it? Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think I gained a great deal, not just knowledge of what Hinduism is and Buddhism is and aren't, but also gave me some food for thought in terms of spiritual possibility. Does that make any sense? Spiritual possibility? Anyway, I really, really enjoyed this book, but I understand why some people wouldn't. There you have it. I loved it. Thanks, guys. Take care.